Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning, Mr. Bengals.
All right, we are in Old Testament. We are in major prophets. We are in Ezekiel. So far, this is nothing new from last week. And today is lesson 2 of 4 in Ezekiel, and the title is Judgment. Done.
Yay.
All right. Can I get a volunteer to open us in prayer? Katie, thank you for volunteering.
Dear Lord, thank you that we could come together today to learn about you and worship you. I pray that we can all pay attention and have a good lesson and learn a lot. And that Mr. Daniel can teach us lessons. And that Pastor Reedy can also, I know, would have open hearts and minds for the message. In Jesus' name, amen.
That was not this.
All right. Thank you very much, Katie.
You're welcome.
Okay, so last week, what did you guys talk about in this class? Someone raise your hand. I want like 2 sentences max of a summary from last week. Can you give me a good summary? Not a silly
Talked
summary.
about 1 through 11 of Ezekiel. That is a summary. Were you expecting to talk about something else?
Yes, Malachi, I was. Lucy, go ahead. Show Malachi what a good summary is like. No pressure.
Well, God was telling Ezekiel to do, object lessons and prophesy against Israel because of all the bad stuff they did.
Yeah.
And he ate poop.
That is one of the object lessons. Yes.
Food, and that's what Jacob.
Yes. He ate food that was cooked with feces. Yes, that is correct.
She did it again, sorry, but she decided she didn't want to.
Hannah, did you have something to add to that summary?
Oh yeah, so God told him to do these things, but also says that the people will have hard hearts.
Mm-hmm.
And then,
Yeah.
I know in the end, if I can remember that, the people got other gods and put them in the temple where the Lord was at and worshipped them, and God left the temple.
Yeah, that's kind of the big conclusion of last week's section is, like, everything leading up was like, okay, Ezekiel's being called as a prophet, all these accusations against Israel of their idolatry and just everything that they've done wrong up to this point, including bringing idols into the temple, and Ezekiel had a big vision at the end. And in that vision, he saw basically the Spirit of the Lord that was dwelling in the temple leave the temple and head off in the direction of Babylon, where God's people, some of them are and some of them will be pretty
Wasn't
soon.
Ezekiel over there at that time?
Yeah, so if you remember back in Chronicles and Kings and some in Isaiah and Jeremiah, just the historical timeline of this is that Babylon came in and there was a little bit of fighting, and they captured some of the people of Jerusalem and took them to Babylon. But Jerusalem was still a city. They were still their own thing. They just lost a battle and had some hostages basically taken. Ezekiel was one of those hostages. I believe Daniel was one of those hostages as well. That was taken in the first wave over to Babylon. Then God is talking to Ezekiel over here in Babylon and showing him what's still going to happen to Jerusalem very soon. And then we'll see, spoiler alert, by the end of today, Jerusalem falls and everybody's being taken back at that point. Okay? We've already seen that multiple times, we're gonna see it again.
Until they're taking test this week, was it?
Yeah, and that's why this week is like, what, 21 chapters
Yeah.
I'm reading?
Yeah.
Yeah, math, whatever. Over 20 chapters, because it doesn't show us anything new that we haven't already studied, but it's a different perspective on very familiar events, right? Jerusalem, Israel, Judah, they bad, judgment coming, nations bad, judgment coming.
Or
Right.
bad.
Yeah, nothing new there, but we get some new perspectives, some new ideas. Okay. Then next week we're going to look at hope. We will see God's power of renewal. We'll start next week, and I would encourage all of you to read these last two sections. They are shorter. Read them, because next week we will see that Ezekiel gets to see firsthand in person something that we like to sing about, when dry bones hear the word of the Lord. And what happens to the dry bones when they hear the word of the live, right? That passage is in, I think it's chapter 37. Okay, so definitely read this week. Okay, we see God's power of renewal, and then we see God's sovereignty over the nations, as there's a personification of all the wicked nations is this one like super mega king, not an actual real person, but a personification of evil named Gog. And we see how Gog gets defeated by God in multiple different ways. And so it's hope of renewal and victory. Then the following week, I'm excited for it, but I'm not going to be here to teach it, so I'm a little sad. But Miss Lorene gets to teach about, it's basically Revelation chapter 21 and 22, but found in the end of Ezekiel.
Yay.
So we get to see basically the new heaven, the new earth, the new Jerusalem, called something a little bit different, but the ultimate restoration when God's dwelling place is with his people, and he is their God, and we are his people, right? And Ezekiel gets that little glimpse into what is still very much future for us. Okay, it's exciting. Okay, look forward to that. Definitely do the reading. Okay, it's not that much, and you have you should all have a bookmark that has the highlights. At least read those highlights. It's like three chapters this week, 3 chapters next week that give you the highlights of those things. Okay? Then after that, we're going to do a single week overview of the book of Daniel. I'm not going to spend that much time on it because that's what Pastor Grady's doing. So we don't need to overlap that much. You might get a little tired of that. All right. So how did the insane amount of reading go for everybody this week?
I did it all yesterday.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Okay. Mixed reviews. That's all right. That's all right. Yeah, this week was a lot, and just looking at it can be intimidating. Again, I tried to give you some highlights so that you didn't have to read a ton, but it was still like 5 chapters of highlights. That's all right. Again, super encourage you guys to read this week and next week. Very short amount of reading there. All right, so let's get into Ezekiel 12 through 33. Everybody should have their Bibles open. Have your notebooks if you took notes, if you want to take notes, and be ready to discuss. So, just a reminder, here are the questions or things to look for as we're reading and discussing. What is God revealing about himself? What is the condition of the people? In other words, like, where's their heart at? What's their attitude like? what picture, symbol, or action stands out. Ezekiel is full of like object lessons, little parables, stories, riddles, not just visions. Like he's got a few of those that are very much stand outy, but he also like does things that the other prophets we don't necessarily see them doing. Like, most of the other prophets are kind of like, here's a big old poem, and Ezekiel's like, I'm gonna build a little model city and put siege works up to it, and then lay there every day for over a year.
Eating poop.
He didn't eat poop.
You can have the food over.
Food and used feces as the fuel,
But it's still
which
nice.
was a fairly common practice, believe it or not. During like siege times, yeah, because you think of it, all of the wood is used for walls or siege, like defense purposes. You don't have firewood to cook your food over. Cows are useful for more than just eating and milking. Okay, then what direction is the passage moving toward? Is it moving toward judgment or restoration? I think today's going to be a pretty easy answer to that, based on the title of the lesson today. But there's a few times where the passage moves in the opposite direction. And then how does this move toward God dwelling with his people, right? Last week, God left dwelling with his people. And so that kind of moved in the opposite direction. But at the same time, he moved towards where his people would be very soon. So ultimately, it kind of neutralized itself.
Being proactive.
Being proactive, yeah. Take a step back so that you can take 3 steps forward, okay? Everybody's good with these questions? They make sense? Okay. All right, then let's get into the first section. I have it divided into 3 sections today. The first is Judgment on Israel, chapters 12 through 24. Still a big chunk. Shannon, I put that in a box for you so that you wouldn't think it was a subject.
Thank you.
It's not just for you. Okay?
No, man, it was really confusing. It's like,
I take feedback, adjust things. Okay, so everybody should be open to 12 through 24. Okay? First of all, what is the context? What had just happened?
stronger than I thought.
Israel, God talks about Israel's new heart and spirit.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So Ezekiel just had his vision of God leaving, but he also sees the leaders of the people of Jerusalem leading the people astray, and God promises restoration and renewal to his people, but then the glory, throne, chariot, spirit of the Lord thing moves and leaves the temple, headed towards Babylon. And then the vision ends. Right? So now we pick it up in chapter 12. So I guess anything in 12 through 24, what stands out? Answer some of these questions for me. Anybody? Especially in the first couple of chapters and moving on. But what do we see?
There's symbols of Israel being a useless vine or faithless bride, and eagles in a vine. And that was confusing,
Mm-hmm.
but
It was. Yeah, so there's several of these pictures or symbols or actions that Ezekiel plays out, where there's a riddle that God gives to Ezekiel to give to the people. And the riddle was a little confusing. It was, what chapter was that?
17.
17. Chapter 17. If you can read 17 and make sense of the riddle, please let me know. Like, it is kind of explained at the end, but it is still like, okay. It's a little bit of, how is that a riddle? I don't know.
As opposed to just a parable.
Yeah, it is kind of just a parable, but it's
translation
called a
error.
riddle. I don't know. But basically, God says, like, okay, there's a great eagle, there's a great tree. The eagle comes over and lops off the top of the tree and takes it over and plants it somewhere else. What is that?
This
Growth?
God going somewhere.
New life?
Babylon taking
And then he answers that. I think he kind of like gives Ezekiel, you know how in like riddle books you go to the back and then you flip it upside down and you're like, oh, there's the answer. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. I think he kind of gives that to Ezekiel. He's like, tell the people this riddle, I'm going to give you the answer, but like, don't tell them yet. And the answer is that the eagle is Babylon, the tree is Jerusalem. Babylon comes in, takes the leaders and the nobility of Jerusalem, plants them in Babylon. Yeah, you got it wrong. Oh, no. But then at the end of that chapter, he says that he will replant the tree and it will grow even better. And it's kind of a messianic prophecy to end Babel. That was kind of cool. All right.
I thought maybe the first eagle was like God, and he's like taking Israel, the vine, and planting them and helping them do good, and then Babylon comes and they're like distracted by another eagle. I wasn't sure.
There's eagles, there's trees.
Eagles and trees.
God explains it, and that helps them.
I thought it was
We
like
can
the
leave it
branch
there.
was like the spirit of God going and being planted somewhere else.
Yep. Riddles or parables are kind of meant to confuse you, right? Like when you get to Jesus telling the parables in the New Testament, the reason he switches to parables is because people basically just aren't listening to him. And so he's like, if you're not going to listen to me, I'm going to make it even more confusing. So that you have to be paying attention to understand it. And he repeatedly says, if you have ears, you will hear. If you're listening, you're going to get it. If you're not paying attention, in one ear, out the other, you know. Yeah. Okay. A couple of the other like pictures or symbols in chapter 12, Ezekiel is instructed to act out going into exile, which I thought was kind of interesting because he is already himself in exile, and he is in a city where the only people who are going to be seeing him are other people who are in exile or the people who just naturally live there.
We already experienced
Yeah,
this.
why are you packing your bags and digging a hole under the wall? We've already, like, we're already here. But it was to show these people who have already experienced it, more refugees are on their way. Right.
Overpopulation.
What?
Overpopulation.
Overpopulation, maybe so. Yep. In chapter 13, the Lord condemns false prophets and kind of squares up against those who smear white paint on broken walls. And I thought that was an interesting, it's not that anyone was actually doing that, but he kind of used that analogy of like, okay, there's a big hole in this wall and it's crumbling and falling apart. Let's just get white paint and cover it up. Okay, fresh coat of paint makes everything better, right? Have you guys heard of the landlord special in apartments?
That's what I do to my Acme.
There you go. So it's like, you know, there's a crack in the wall,
Just splash.
or like a light switch cover, or the outlet cover, or like a spider or whatever, and the landlord comes in with white paint and just covers it all, and you have like,
A brooch.
it's just white paint over the light switch and over the outlet. And then there's just like a plastered white spider on the wall. That's what God is saying. He's like, don't do the landlord special. If the wall is broken, don't just slap a fresh coat of paint on it. Fix it. Do something about it.
What if I don't want to?
What?
I was like, but what if I don't want
What if I don't want it? Yeah. In chapter 14, Yahweh is tired of people bringing idols to consult the prophet. So like, people are coming to Ezekiel to get a word from the Lord, but they're bringing their idols with them. And like, here, get a word from my idol. Tell me what the deal is. And God is like sick and tired and fed up with that. And he says, like, at this point, even if 3 of Israel's most righteous men, Noah, the only righteous man left on earth, that the Lord then saved from the catastrophe that wiped out everything else. Job, someone that there was no fault found in him, to the point that the Lord allowed horrendous things to be done to him to test him. And then the one that I thought was interesting was Daniel, someone who was alive at the time that Ezekiel is getting this word. And Grady has pointed out, one of the few people in the Bible that didn't have any faults that were mentioned specifically. Not that he was perfect, but, you know, even great people like Moses definitely had faults. Right? But
Did you know what Daniel was?
I think so, yeah. Because remember, Ezekiel was one of the first wave, and I'm pretty sure that Daniel was with him. So like, they would have known each other, at least known of each other.
I know Daniel was alive later.
Mhm.
So, like, is he just old or what?
So obviously, Daniel is someone that the Lord at least said to Ezekiel, like, this guy, you know, name dropped him. So like, presumably Ezekiel would have known who Daniel was, and
Yeah.
other people that Ezekiel would have shared this message with would have known who Daniel was. I think they were probably about the same age, but Daniel was alive and active during this time. And apparently righteous enough and wise enough to be included in this, where God says, like, Noah, Job, and Daniel, even if all 3 of them were alive and all 3 of them came to me and like begged me to spare Israel, they would be the only ones left. I would wipe out the rest of Israel and leave those 3 men and their families alive.
That's like what happened in
Yeah, so it's like,
Nehemiah.
we're again past the point of no return, where even the 3 most righteous men in Israel's history can't stop what's coming. They'll be spared, but that's it.
Sounds a lot like what happened in Nehemiah. Even if Moses came and begged, like, they were.
That was in Jeremiah.
Oh.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
thing is, he promised Abraham he'll have a nation.
Mhm. Yeah, and later on in one of these chapters, the Lord condemns the people of Israel for forsaking Abraham's covenant and saying, like, you guys are the descendants of Abraham, who was promised a land and people and all these great things, and you turned your back on that covenant and broke the promises, and that's why this is happening. I don't remember, I have it written down. It's in one of these chapters. I'll tell you when we get it.
Whatever.
I jumped ahead.
I'm kind of just giving the highlights, like mainly the pictures or symbols in each of these chapters. So as I'm going, if you see an answer to one of the other questions, jump in and let me know.
I see that in this whole big section of 12 to 24, God's revealing that he doesn't change. What he has been saying all along
Absolutely.
is no different than what he said to Jeremiah, what he said to Isaiah, what he said since the beginning, but then it also displays the people are bad.
See chapter
Like-
16.
Yeah, 16, chapter 20, but they rebelled against me, we're not listening, but the house of Israel rebelled against me, but the house of Israel rebelled against me, they profaned my Sabbaths, the children rebelled against me,
So chapter 15, Jerusalem is compared to like the stick part of a vine that like has no real use except to be burned as firewood. And even then, like its only use is in its destruction. And afterwards, it's gone and is still no use. Jerusalem is only good to be destroyed at this point. That's pretty rough.
That's like a slap to the face.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of slaps to faces. Speaking of slaps to faces, chapter 16, I just made a little note right here in my Bible, and it says, bro. In chapter 16, Jerusalem is, I wrote it down, I'm just going to read this. Jerusalem is called an unclean, foreign-born abomination of a baby whom Yahweh adopted and raised in a place until she whored herself out to foreign men, sacrificing her father's food to them and slaughtering the children she bore. I wrote another word in there that I censored. Yahweh doesn't censor himself. Jerusalem is a whore, and she and her lovers will be destroyed by the jealous husband.
Wow.
When I was reading that, again, I wrote, bro. Lucy and I were talking about, like, we both listened to it and got to the point where the narrator reads pretty strong language, and we were both like, did the audiobook skip to something other than the Bible here? No, that's what it said. Right? The words that I wrote here that I just read to you are words from the Bible. I did not say any words that are not in the Bible. Okay? I wrote one, but then I didn't say it. It is very vivid of an unfaithful woman doing very unfaithful things. And then we revisit this in a few chapters with a slightly different analogy. All right, so
Then
again,
it's like,
bro. All right, and at the end of that is the Lord's everlasting covenant. Like, there's like a little paragraph kind of reminding the people about the covenant. We already talked about chapter 17 with the eagles and the tree and all that. Chapter 18 was a lot of words for a short concept. Because it's said again and again and again and again and again so that you might understand it. Okay? In chapter 18, the Lord says in great detail, at length, and repeatedly, that each person is responsible for their own sin and will be punished accordingly. Okay? It's a decently long chapter, but that's what it says. For what it says, it's a long chapter.
yeah, for what it does say.
When it
That's a
could
lot
be
of
this
words.
long, it's this long.
Well, if it's that long, that means that you know it's important.
Yeah, you know it's important if he spends that much time repeating himself, saying the same thing, and going a little bit further into detail of like all the parts of the covenant that can be broken. But it's just saying, your sin is your problem. If your father sinned, that's his problem. If you have a kid and your kid sins, that's his problem. Your sin is your problem. And that's kind of different than what they were used to. They were used to the sins of the father being visited on the second, third, and fourth generation, and things like that. But at this point, he's like, that's done. Your sin, your problem. Individuals. Okay? Yeah, you're responsible for yourself. And it ends with, "For I have no pleasure in the death of anyone, declares the Lord. So turn and live." Right? Anytime you hear like, well, why would a loving God send people to hell? I have no pleasure in the death of anyone, declares the Lord God. So turn and live. God does not send anyone to hell. People send themselves to hell by rejecting God. Okay? Chapter 19. Chapter 19, Israel's rulers are compared to captured lions and a destroyed vine. So captured lions that are just lashing out, and a vine that is just destroyed and useful for throwing away at that point. Doesn't produce any fruit, just burn it. The leadership has failed catastrophically. And like that's the problem, is that the people in charge are leading the people in the wrong direction. Okay? Anybody have anything to add up to this point?
19.
Yeah, we're in 19.
My other thoughts with the rest of the chapters.
In chapter 20, we see that some of Israel's elders that are in exile with Ezekiel, they come over to Ezekiel's house. Like, apparently they recognize his authority from God, because we see a few different times that people, some of the elders come over and talk with him and listen to him. But like, they're not exactly hearing what he's saying, they just kind of sit in the same room while he's talking. And in one of these cases, the Lord recounts Israel's rebellion from the time they were in Egypt onward, and how the people rejected him despite repeated mercy. So he kind of just, Ezekiel gives them their history of their failings. Like, the moment you stepped foot out of Egypt, you started failing. Right? If you remember, it was like they crossed the Red Sea, and then the very first stop was where there was bitter water, and like they complained immediately. Right? Immediately they complained. And the bitter water was made sweet, and they're like, yeah, great. And then the next stop, they're like, oh, something's bad. And then God provides, yeah, great. And the next stop, oh, it's bad again. We should just go back to Egypt. And then God provides, yeah.
So much better.
Right? And then they just keep doing it.
Chaos.
Boom, the cycle of chaos. Okay. Yahweh says that he will be king of Israel. It just might be with an outstretched arm and wrath poured out. Like, I'm going to be the king of Israel whether they want me or not. And it might take the Babylonian army coming in and destroying them for them to realize that Nebuchadnezzar is not a good king, but Yahweh is. Okay? Leading right into chapter 21, the Lord's sword will be drawn against Israel. Judgment is coming, and it will be heartbreaking. I think in Jeremiah, if you remember, the Lord spoke to his sword and said, like, how long are you going to be active? When will you be put away? And then he's like, oh yeah, the sword's out until the work is done. And there's still work to be done in Israel. So, very rough.
Moving towards judgment.
Yeah, we're definitely still moving towards judgment, not towards restoration. Definitely. And the condition of the people is, I think Hannah said it earlier, their hearts are closed off.
Yeah, especially in the beginning.
Yeah, and like God told him that that's what it's going to be. You're going to talk and people aren't going to listen. Yeah.
It's kind of like, what's his name, Pharaoh
Mm-hmm.
with
The
Moses.
hardened hearts. Yeah, we see that a lot. When God speaks, people don't listen when they should. Yep. All right. Chapter 22. We have violence and injustice and corruption and idolatry that fill the city, and the leaders, the priests, the prophets are all guilty. and they will be gathered as impure precious metal and put through the purifying fire. So that's kind of the imagery there is if you have like dirty gold and silver and you put it in a furnace and heat it up really hot and it melts, and then you have like the impurities float to the surface, but that gold or silver has to be heated up really hot before that can happen. And it's the purifying process. And then you can scrape those dirty things off the top, throw it away, and you have pure precious metal again. But it's a hard process for the metal. It has to be reshaped from whatever solid form it was in to its basic
A blob.
components, a blob. Yeah, kind of like the clay metaphor that he used a lot with Jeremiah, right? Where you reshape and restart. Okay. That was 22. Okay, 23. Oh boy. 23 is much like chapter 16 with the unfaithful woman. It's revisited kind of here with chapter 23 with two sisters. And the sisters' names are Ohola and Oholabah. Right? Super easy to remember. Very similar. Ohola, and it says it right here in verse 4, Ohola is Samaria. Okay? Samaria is the capital of the northern nation of Israel. And Oholabah is Jerusalem, the capital city of the southern kingdom of Judah. Okay? So these two sisters are the two nations, Israel and Judah. Okay? And I looked it up because I was like, why are we calling them by names other than what they are? Why can't we just call them Samaria and Jerusalem? Is there a reason that these names are what they are? Yes. Samaria's name is Ohola, and that means her own tent, or her own tabernacle. Because Samaria had their own worshiping system. It was not the place where the Lord dwelt, right? The tabernacle or the temple where the Lord dwells, they had their own thing. Okay? And so her name is her own tent. And Oholabah, you'll hear similarities between Ohola and Oholabah. So Jerusalem's name is my tent or my tabernacle is in her, or she possesses my tabernacle. So it's a way that God says the people who do their own thing and the people that should be doing my thing. Okay? And these two sisters, not great. They once again whore after foreign men and defile themselves, resulting in their destruction and that of their families. Okay? By this point in time, the northern nation of Israel has already been wiped out by the Assyrians. And these are the foreign men that she went after. And it straight up just talks about them as the Assyrians. So that was another nation that came in and took the people away, and the people of the northern kingdom just are no more. Some of them are over here, some of them are over here. They're intermingling. They have forsaken their ancestral roots of being people of Yahweh. Right? And then Jerusalem, the other sister, does the same thing with other foreign people, but in more detail and to a greater extent. And what do you know? She is taken away as well. Right? Now, at this point, Jerusalem has not been destroyed and taken away. So this is like, you've seen your big sister got taken away because of what she did. You're going to be taken away because of what you are doing as well, just like her. Right? So this should be very sobering, and someone earlier said a slap in the face to the people of Judah who are still waiting for these foreign people to take her away. Okay? Then in chapter 24, there's a foretelling of the siege of Jerusalem. No, sorry. The foretold siege of Jerusalem begins. There we go. Read the words that you wrote. So we get word that Jerusalem is now under siege, right? So at the beginning of the book, Ezekiel set up his little model city and acted out a siege. That is happening now. Okay? The end is coming. I think it was still, what, a year and a half or something like that that the siege went on. But it has started now. Jerusalem is compared to a boiling pot full of impurity. Right? So you're making soup, but you got a bunch of garbage in there. You gotta get that garbage out if that soup is gonna be any good. Or you just toss the whole thing out. Okay? In the second half of that chapter, Ezekiel's wife dies suddenly. God gave him this much warning. He said, I'm going to take away everything that makes you smile. And then she died, like, I think it was that night.
You can sigh, but not out loud.
And yeah, God said, any sadness that you show has to be done in private. And your job as a prophet is very much public. Tomorrow morning, when you wake up and she's dead in bed beside you, you can cry a little bit while you're still home. Then you need to go out, put on a happy face, keep preaching this message. Even when people say, hey, didn't your wife die? You say, yeah. You know who else's wife is going to die?
Oops.
God's wife, Jerusalem. Isn't that great?
No.
That's rough.
Someone just walks up to you, oh yeah, America's gonna be taken away with a happy smile.
So, that's kind of rough. Alright. And that concludes the judgment on Israel. Because then, in the next sections, 25 through 32, it switches over to judgment on the nations. Again, very similar to what we saw in Jeremiah. There's a section for Israel, there's a section for the nations. And like I said, there's not really anything new information. There's just a new perspective.
Yep.
Right? So, chapter 25, we see that neighboring nations are all judged for mocking Judah's fall. Right? So, they see, think back to the days of David and Solomon when there's so much gold that silver was just useless and everything was amazing. And, Israel, Jerusalem was like this beautiful place that people wanted to be. And then it just went downhill after that. And there was civil war, they split, there's now kings and they're killing each other and just, it's a mess. And there's all sorts of idolatry, the nation is just falling apart, and all of the neighbors are like, you used to be so great, and now you're not. And God is saying, hey, remember when you laughed at them when they were falling apart? That was bad. Don't do that. You're destroyed now. You're destroyed. You're following after them now. I don't think God went, I think it probably hurt him, but still. He doesn't delight in the death of anyone. Turn and live. Yeah. But we see Ammon, Moab, and Seir, Edom, Philistia, all just in chapter 25. 26, we turn to one of the big trading nations that's very wealthy, and they're the economic center of the world, and that is the city of Tyre, and it is brought in on this judgment as well, and will be brought low and destroyed. And they get 3 chapters? They get 29 moves to Egypt. They get 2 chapters.
Sorry.
And in these chapters, one of the like symbols or pictures that stood out is that Tyre, which is a coastal city known for its trade and economic standpoint, they are depicted as a great, massive, beautiful ship on the ocean. That, like, okay, that's very common for a coastal city that trades with its neighbors. Yeah, they would know what a cargo ship would look like. And Tyre is this beautiful ship made out of the best materials, and it has the best crew, and they do all of this trading, and they talk about these different cities that they're trading different things with, and like beautiful and amazing and doing great things, and they are shipwrecked. Exactly. Right? Think like the Titanic, the unsinkable ship.
Got some.
And it got sunk, right? And waves came out of the seas, and essentially they got steered into the rocks and destroyed. So even the great nation city of Tyre will be brought down and destroyed.
Because they got tired.
Because they got tired. Then in chapter 28, there's a prophecy against the prince and the king of Tyre. A lot of people see 11 through 19 as talking about Satan. Ooh.
What?
28, 11 through 19. Read that sometime. We're kind of out of time to read that in here, but read that sometime and think, is this talking about a human king or is this talking about someone else? I'll give you a couple highlights. You were the signet of perfection, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. You were in Eden, the garden of God. Every precious stone was your covering. You were an anointed guardian cherub. I placed you. You were on the holy mountain of God.
That makes sense.
You were blameless in your ways from the day you were created. Your heart was proud because of your beauty. You corrupted your wisdom for the sake of your splendor. I cast you to the ground. I exposed you before kings to feast their eyes on you. Okay, some of those things in chapter 28, verses 11 through 19, are a bit of a stretch to think of that even symbolically as talking about a human king being a guardian cherub in the Garden of Eden, covered in precious stones. Okay, that could be symbolism for something, I guess.
No one alive at that time was in the Garden of Eden.
Exactly.
And no
So
human was
most scholars agree that this is like maybe a double prophecy, where like symbolically, with great amount of symbolism, we're talking about the king of Tyre. Okay, he's an exalted king. He's the leader of an economic nation. But then also we're like in a pretty literal sense talking about Satan. Okay, so read that for yourself sometime.
Where is it?
28, 11 through 19. Okay, then 29, 30, 31, 32 are all prophecies against Egypt. Okay, like I said, there's nothing really new in there. Egypt, great empire. God made Egypt not great empire. Okay, Pharaoh is seen as this like water monster in the Nile, and he gets harpoons stuck in him and ripped out of the water and just flops like a fish out of water on the banks of the Nile. And Babylon comes in and wipes him out, breaks both of his arms. Like,
I thought it was fascinating.
Egypt is going down. It does say Egypt will be brought back, but will never be as high as it was. Egypt is a nation today,
Yeah, we
but
see that
after
in
this
history.
time, they have never been as great as before, right?
And you read about that in your history books.
Yeah, you can read about that in history. Egypt exists like in the Roman Empire. as subjects of Rome. Right? They were yeah, not a superpower. They were brought low, just like God said would happen. Okay? Then the last chapter is its own section, and it kind of acts as a recap of everything that we've talked about in Ezekiel so far. Ezekiel, his commission from chapter 3 is renewed as being the watchman, and God says, if I tell you that bad things are happening, and you tell the people, and they don't listen, that's on them. He says it as, Ezekiel, you are a watchman on top of the walls, and if you see the danger is coming, and you like ring the alarm bell, and people just stay in bed, they hear it and they're like, yeah, whatever. That's not on you. You did your job. They didn't listen, and they are destroyed. That's on them. Keep warning the people of the danger that's coming. Don't be discouraged when they don't listen to you. He reminds the people that each person is responsible for his own iniquity. Again, probably pretty important if he spent the whole chapter saying that one sentence and then brings it up over here in the recap. Probably pretty important. And then a messenger comes in from Jerusalem and says, the city has been destroyed. And Ezekiel's like, what? Really? No way. Bizarre.
It sounds like something I was saying earlier.
Who could have seen this coming and acted it out and told you guys about it?
I did play with action figures.
Hey, chapter 33. Chapter 33 is where God says, you guys are the descendants of Abraham. What I was saying earlier. You are the descendants of Abraham, and you have turned your back on the covenant, and now you have lost the promised land. Like, now that it has happened, that Jerusalem has fallen, you have lost the promised land. The covenant has been broken, not by me, but by all y'all guys. Okay? All y'all guys. This week was really rough, really big. There were a lot of times where I was like, ooh, I need to walk away from reading that for a little bit.
That's gross.
That's gross. That's pretty strong language. Next week, the next 2 weeks, so much better. So much better. Also so much shorter, so we're not overwhelmed by all that information. But again, super duper encourage you guys to read these last 2 sections. Okay? Read it for yourselves, even just those highlights. Okay? It is full of hope, it is full of encouragement, and then it is full of like something to look forward to eventually one day. We are included in the people that God calls his own. Okay? So read that for yourselves, please. Dear Lord. Wow. You are great and amazing and all-powerful and holy, holy, holy. And we are, well, we're not. Thank you so much for forgiving us, for providing a way that we can be restored, that we don't have to go through the judgment and the things that would make people say, bro, really? But that we have a way out of that. Thank you for giving us hope. Thank you that your plan includes our salvation. Thank you that you don't delight in the destruction, but you give us a chance to turn and live. And I thank you in the name of the one who gives us that chance, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.